All right, hold your horses. Before you say, but licensed video games do exist, I'm not saying that they don't exist anymore, but do you remember back in the PS2 days where almost every movie, for some reason, had a tie-in game? You had The Matrix, Batman Begins, Harry Potter, The Lord of the Rings, King Kong, Shrek 2, Superman Returns. That's the wrong, what the fuck? It was to the point where movies would even advertise their tie-in games in the credits of the movies itself. Hell, The Incredibles didn't even make a sequel. The actual sequel to The Incredibles isn't The Incredibles 2. It's the PS2 game or the GameCube game or the Xbox game. Microsoft Windows, Mac OS, Game Boy Advance, PlayStation 2, Xbox, GameCube, Nintendo DS. My mom, they continued the story of The Incredibles in that game. They technically didn't need to make an Incredibles 2, and frankly, they probably shouldn't have. Now, did I play the game? Fuck no. I was too busy getting my ass beat by the Sandy Bottom Battle for Bikini Bottom. I wasn't a very smart kid. But seriously, why were there so many of these games? It's simple. Back then, every movie studio wanted a piece of the video game pie. So they'd hand out their movie rights to publishers like THQ, Activision, or frankly anyone, and they'd say, hey, make something before the movie drops. And the dev go, sure, but you realize your movie releases in 4 months. And then the devs left them on read and then send an email with the 3D models, 2 pictures of the plot, and a thumbs up. And that's how we end up with Cat in the Hat the game. The only notable thing about this game is that Nolan North plays the fish. Okay, so let me get this straight. They would force devs to make games that are garbage, barely function, and vaguely tie into the IP they're based off of, all for what? The PS2 era was when these games were mainstream. Well, I call it the PS2 era, but all of these games were released on fucking everything that had a computer chip inside it. Every movie studio decided to maximize their profits and pay barely enough for a video game to be made to boost their profits for the movie it's based off of. All in the hopes to have some sort of insurance plan in case the movie flops. But that's the movie tie-in game, which, yes, were the majority of all this shovelware garbage, but almost everything that could have been licensed was licensed and put on store shelves. Fucking even video games themselves were getting licensed at one point. You know the saying, a broken clock is right twice a day. Well, that was the same situation with these licensed video games. If you throw 100 shits at the wall, some will stick. Now, do people still remember and talk about, say, Spider-Man 2? Battle for Bikini Bottom? Yes. But do you hear people talking about Little Britain, the video game? Yes. One guy, this YouTuber I used to watch called Tennings, made a video on it. And for some reason, it's been stuck with me ever since I've watched it. Hi, I don't know where this video is going. Unlike nowadays, where games are giant behemoths that require hundreds of devs to give thousands of hours of their life to make sure Arthur Morgan skins a horse perfectly, games back in the PS2 era really didn't require a lot. I say that as someone who doesn't make games and doesn't realize how complex they are. I once downloaded Unreal Engine 4, so I think that constitutes my opinion on game development. But let's just look at the data. At most, PS2 games took around 2 years to make, like the actual masterpieces, like Spider-Man 2 that I keep talking about. But today, the sequel to Spider-Man PS4 took 5 whole years to make. Wasn't even worth that. But some of the most beloved PS2 games are in fact licensed games. The Simpsons Hit and Run, The Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit games, Cars, Incredibles. Again, have I played all of these? No, I was too busy fighting the Sandy boss, aren't you listening? But where did they go? Think about it. Wouldn't you want to play a game based on Sinners, Bullet Train, John Wick? Well, it's simple. Even though I don't want the answer to be simple, it is in fact simple. Budgets for everything in media are just bloated. Even Sinners, which was considered a medium to large budget, cost $90 million. Do you understand how much $90 million is? You're literally more likely to be struck by lightning twice throughout your whole lifetime than to ever see $90 million hit your bank account. Now, if you were to make a video game based off of it, you wouldn't really want to make a AA game. The execs would want to make nothing short of a AAA game. Hell, maybe even a quadruple A game. Shout out Ubisoft. Well, $300 please. I think I think that's like 3 lightning strikes. How would you even begin to make a profit at that point? From watching movie YouTubers and not doing my own research, I learned that for a movie to make profit, it would need to make over double their budget, since the budget doesn't take the marketing budget into account. Now, how would you hit any sort of profit if you need to add 50 million on top of every budget of a movie you see? You don't, and that's just the sad reality. Not for these executives when they're talking to millions. Who's this sad reality for? There isn't some grandiose reason as to why movie tie-in games are dead. There isn't some reality where the world is working against the lowly gamer and the execs don't want you to play games based off their movies. Also, I really want to play a John Wick game. I swear to God, that's like one of the few ideas that would roll in so much money that the executives wouldn't have to be hit by lightning 3 times. What's the last movie tie-in game we had? Dune, that was barely a movie tie-in. Unfortunately, nowadays, you don't really even have to make a whole game. Just contact Fortnite, Roblox, PUBG, Call of Duty, probably even Battlefield at this point, all of them at the same time, and then you're good. The brunt of the development budget is eaten by those games, and all the movies get are literally exposure. K-pop Demon Hunters, something. But here's the thing. The way these old games were made were absolute chaos. Studios didn't get full scripts or character models. They'd get like 5 blurry JPEGs from the trailer that wasn't released yet and a deadline. It's a miracle some of these games even remotely resembled the movies they were based off of. Some of these games came out even before the movie was released. The SpongeBob movie game came out 2 whole weeks before the movie came out, and it just straight up told the whole plot of the movie. Verbatim, might I add, using photos, concept art from the movie. Side note, this game is so ass. When I got it, I thought it would be like Battle for Bikini Bottom, but like instead it was just filled with these most absurd padding I think I've ever seen in a video game. Why do I have to do the same sliding section 3 times with different stipulations? I genuinely didn't finish this game because of how much they wanted me to replay the same thing over and over and over. And some people say they like it better than Battle for Bikini Bottom. What was I talking about? Alright, the same thing happened with Incredibles, Cars, Wall-E, and I'm tired of comparing release dates now. This epiphany came to me when I was watching the end credits of, I want to say Infinity War, but but you know how at the end you get all those like Dolby logos and like the MPAA? For some reason, I remember watching a movie back in the day and it said something about like play the game, continue the story. And then lo and behold, in the end credits of The Incredibles, it says to play the games by THQ. That's the point we were at. It really feels like Pixar was fully trying to break into the video game market because they apparently saw the future and what Pixar eventually becomes. And I think they were doing the right thing. They just stopped too early. The reason I think it was more animated movies than it was regular real life movies getting games was because all the movie developers, all the studio needed to do was send their models to the development company alongside some cliff notes and have them just do their thing and shit out a game close to release. But it's not really limited to Pixar or animated movies. It really was everywhere. You can play the whole first phase of Marvel in video game form. Pirates of the Caribbean had a whole series on the PS2. The Fast and the Furious, Star Wars, X-Men. It's literally never ending. I really couldn't find a statistic given how much bullshit is on the PS2, but I would bet a very sizable chunk of the library is just tie-in video games. Yes, all of these games probably have small cult followings, but how much of a marketing push is worth these multi-million-dollar games? There was way too much money back then. Maybe this is what led to that really funny thing that happened in 2009, I don't know. With the decline of the PS2 worldwide, but not Brazil for some reason, video game budgets started to balloon to massive sizes. What took maybe $5 to $10 million now takes around $20 to $30 million in the PS3 and Xbox era. It became less of an afterthought to make a tie-in game and more of a conscious decision. Although there was still quite a few more than I remember, honestly, but it was very evident that movie studios were less keen on investing in video games. And to be honest, by this point, video games didn't need to have an external IP to drive sales. The general public had begun to realize games are their own media, and they can pick up a game called Demon's Souls and not the Chronicles of Riddick. But animated movies were still having a field day. I think my theory about the 3D models is true, because at this point the games looked exactly like the movies they were based on. The Megamind game looks like ass though. Do you remember there was this big scare that console gaming is dead and your phone can now run console quality games, so there's no point in buying a console anymore? I specifically remember this video from Review Tech USA where he plugged his phone into his monitor while the phone was playing Modern Combat 5 and said, "Oh my god guys, console gaming is dead." I would love to show you that video, but this dude decided to delete his whole channel. Anyways, movie studios saw this and immediately saw that Angry Birds got like 1 trillion downloads, so immediately they pivoted to just making movie tie-in games on the phone. You remember Snail Movie? I just covered it a few weeks ago. That had a mobile tie-in game. Monsters University, The Dark Knight Rises, Shrek, and probably a million more shovelware titles, all trying to be the next best thing to grace the iPhone 5S. This era didn't last long, and it was honestly for the best. These weren't even adaptations of the movies. They were mostly just 2D platformers or minigame collections slapped next to actual microtransaction hell. And this era just went out with a wet fart because holy fuck, that Turbo game made me so angry. While I'm on the topic of mobile games, why does every racing game have a fuel system on phones? Let me play the game. I'm not gonna pay for fuel. I'm already paying enough for gas as it is. Are there movie tie-in games in today's age? Not really. Making a game is a very, very, very expensive endeavor. Need I remind you about the lightning strikes? So nowadays, there aren't really tie-in games, but rather video games set in the same universe, such as the Dune game, the Star Wars games, Indiana Jones. Not adaptations, but expansions in the universe of these stories. Somehow I feel like Marvel caused this, but I don't know. Really, the only movie tie-in game that has really come out wasn't even a game. It was a tech demo for the Unreal Engine based on the new Matrix movie, which is like 3 minutes long and honestly a very cool tech demo, but the movie tie-in is dead. There's no movie studio that wants to take the risk involved with making a game, and that's very unfortunate. They would rather make a Fortnite collab than make a new game from the ground up. Which, while I'm saying that out loud, yes, I completely understand, but let me live in my fantasy, damn it. All we can do is imagine. Let's imagine together. You know that movie that's kind of famous right now? Something about K-pops and demons. I think some goober made like 2 videos on it. I don't know. Now imagine a tie-in game that follows the gameplay sort of like the gameplay of Deadass Disco. Just fully rhythm-based hack and slash. Dude, that would go so hard. What about a John Wick game? Something like the Hitman games, but with the added action of the John Wick movies, maybe with some Max Payne elements. I'm sounding crazy, but man, where did the fun go in video games? If I ever become uber rich, you wouldn't know, but there would be signs. It's funny to think how low our standards were back then. Sure, we can look back and see how garbage some of these games were and how phoned in and duct taped together it all was. But even through all of that, we would play these games. We would see these games on shelves and literally judge it on its cover and title. You would see Ratatouille in theaters at your local mall, head to the GameStop, and then see Ratatouille on shelves and literally make the face. And you play that game front to back, side to side, inside out, every which way, and you loved every second of it because you're a dumb child, right? Not me. I was a smart child beating the Sandy bot in Battle for Bikini Bottom Keep Up. But alas, rising budgets have affected every aspect of our lives. So it's no different that video games were also hit by that. But we did lose something really special in the gaming landscape. I would say mostly for the best because most of these games are garbage. But deep down, you know that I know, that you know that I know, that you and me would love a John Wick game. Please, IOI Interactive, can you please make a John Wick game? I beg of you. What the fuck is John Wick Hex? You are literally more like you're what?